Good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. Got interference. Can you hear that? Okay, I'll carry on. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. Should we just, let's swap mics. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Children, Families and Education Select Committee. My name is Councillor Heena Makwana and I'm the chair of this committee. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. And when you are invited to speak, please ensure you turn your microphones on so that you can be heard in the recording. For those watching via YouTube, if you are so minded, can you complete one of our resident feedback forms? These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way that we run our meetings. So before we go through our agenda, I'd like to introduce colleagues in the room. So to my right, I have Councillors Gohill, Smallwood and Batt. To my left, it's Ryan Dell, Democratic Services Officer, and then Councillors Sweeting, Judge and Gill, Mr Tony Little, our co-opted member, and the officers joining us this evening are Laura Baldry, Georgia Watson, Susie Gladish and Alex Coman. So welcome to you all. Thank you very much. So agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Ryan.
So we've got apologies from Councillor Hegger and Councillor Gohill substituting.
Okay, thank you Councillor Gohill for subbing this evening. Item 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before this meeting. Are there any? No, great. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, that's the 17th of July. Do we agree those minutes? Agreed. Councillor Sweeting.
Just as an update really, we have got the youth offer delivery model coming to our November meeting. Would it be possible to invite the youth forum to join us for that meeting, because it would be quite interesting, I would have thought, to get their intake on what has been happening in respect of the youth offer.
Okay, so we'll ask Ryan to take that away and ask if that's possible. Okay, agenda item 4, which is to confirm that the items of business marked in part 1 will be considered in public and the items marked as part 2 will be considered in private. There are no part 2 items, so we move straight to agenda item 5, which is move-ins to the Borough and in-year admission. So I'm going to hand you over to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. So the paper has been shared with everyone, and I just wondered if anyone has any questions off the back of that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sweeting.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you very much. There's a couple of issues. One, are asylum-seeking children still in the airport hotels, or are they being accommodated elsewhere? That was my sort of first question. My second was a much more basic one about the tightness that there is in years 9 and 10. When we look at page 16, you will see that most of the unfilled capacity is in the very north of the borough of those two schools. And when it comes to move-ins, where most of the move-ins, I think, are in the south, we have actually got a problem. I've had significant problems, not with only move-ins, but there's another issue that I'd like to share with you after that. But airport hotel, are they being used still for asylum-seeking children? And secondly, comments on the tightness in those years 9 and 10, as highlighted on page 16.
Regarding your first point, Alex said he'll answer that point. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, Councillor Chair, thank you very much. If we're asking about unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in hotels, there are none in Hillingdon or any other hotel. So if the children are unaccompanied in a hotel, we the local authority will provide accommodation in a timely way, and after that we will be looking at the national transfer scheme to make sure that they are transferred to the appropriate local authority. And whilst they are in Hillingdon, they will be provided with ESOL courses. So that's the approach. And now, if the children are there with their families, we do still have a number of families who live in local hotels, which are used by Home Office for the asylum-seeking families, and for them the same sort of provision in terms of education is being provided as always has been.
Thank you, Alex. And with regards to your points on the year groups, particularly year 9 and 10, yes, we are aware of that. There is some schools that haven't shared information with us. So schools, Parkside Studio College, Rosedale, I think Hewins and DeSalis. I haven't actually put DeSalis on there, but they are schools as well that we haven't got an update on recently with regards to their numbers, but it's not going to be substantial like some of them schools in the north. With these particular year groups where we are struggling to find spaces for children, that's where we will use our Fair Access panel to take children to that are hard to place and have been out of education for a period of time.
Please, Chair. There's another issue which is a bit more sort of complex. It's not move-ins, it's people living in Hillingdon, have been living in Hillingdon for many years, but their children are in private schools out Borough. And I have one case that I've been dealing with where this particular private school finishes at year 8. He's coming back and he's been on the waiting list of all the schools near him for 3 years, and he's got none of them. So the nearest school is going to be far, far away, and in fact he's still waiting for Hillingdon to provide him with the school that he's going to. That is another problem, and I think with the changes of policy from central government, we need to be prepared for that somehow, and are we?
I don't know what school that's in relation to, or whether that child's now left the school, because if they're no longer in receipt of education, so would he be year 9 potentially? So we need to be made aware, because it may be that we've still got him on our system as in a school, and that's something we'll need to update. And yeah, we would be looking actively at vacancies in surrounding schools that are local to the home address, and if they are out of school without a school place and there's no schools local, that's when he would meet the threshold, or she would meet the threshold for fair access.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question leads on from, I think it is working, it just hasn't illuminated. Councillor, leading on from Councillor Sweeting's important question, she'll be aware, and I'm aware, that the new government obviously is implementing 20% on VAT on people at private schools. Many of those are hard-working families in Hillingdon who go the extra mile to make sure that their children can have an education that they have decided to give them. Many of those will no longer be able to afford that because of the decisions that this new government has made, which will obviously mean that those children are forced into going into new schools, breaking up potentially mid-year things. How do we think, how many of those do we think there's going to be? Have we had indications from parents about what that looks like? And do we think we'll have the capacity to fill the decision of that decision? I obviously don't want you to make a comment on the political bit, but I would like to understand the impact that is going to have on schools in Hillingdon as that decision has been made.
So prior to the election, we did have a lot of correspondence from parents that were mainly sending inquiries with regards to vacancies in the borough. We responded to all of those parents, sharing with them the vacancies that were in primary and secondary sector. Off the back of that, I've done some data on, from around June was when we generally started noticing some inquiries. So from June until Friday, just gone to the 13th of September, we've received 59 applications from parents of children that are attending a private school. That's where they've indicated private school as their previous school or current school. And a breakdown of that is both 29 for secondary and 30 for primary, and that's a range across all year groups. So at the moment, those applications are being processed or have been processed. Most of those children, their current school still remains as the private school, so the likelihood is they'll remain in that school until they get one of our schools. If they choose or if they have to pull them out because it's not financially viable, as long as they inform us of that and we're aware they're no longer in school, then we can actively look at other school places or schools with vacancies that they haven't listed on their application. So we will continue to monitor that.
Research from the Taxpayers Alliance suggests that actually this policy will end up costing the taxpayer more money and actually putting a bigger burden on our residents and on the taxpayer. Is there any indication from central government that we will get an uplift in costs and fees that comes in association of people coming out of private education into mainstream?
That's not something that I've been made aware of or have been involved with, but I am going to the London Council's meeting on the 14th of October, which is usually for place planning staff, but I'm going to attend that because there is going to be a section on private schools and the influx that particular boroughs have had and how boroughs are managing that. And they've also asked if any boroughs have noticed a dramatic rise in applications from private school residents to reach out to them. So yeah, that's something that we are on board with.
If I may just to add something else, just from reading the paper, from hearing what my colleague is saying, I think there is reassurance in here, and I think we need to be reassured, and the committee needs to be reassured that we have the right processes in place to receive the applications in a timely way, to address them in a timely way, to use the e-admission that we have in place, and that seems to be working quite well, and also to make sure that those 59 and any others are addressed in a timely way, in an equal and in an equal way. And if anything else changes in terms of national policy and that sort of thing, of course we're going to be responding to the existing legislation as needed.
Thank you, Laura. Can I just come back to that number, 59 applications? Do we know if those children, young people, are actually with SEND provision or from a SEND school?
No, all of those. Apologies. All of those would be from a mainstream private school. They're not, and if they were in a special independent school, that would go through the SEND team. So they would then be looking to review those plans and moving them out of that. But that's paid through their plan anyway, so that wouldn't have that financial impact.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Little.
I'd like to return to what Alex was saying about language skills for people arriving from abroad. You said ESOL lessons are provided. Can you say something about how long these will apply, what length the course is, and what standard it's expected to reach, and what impact it has on the children as they get allocated to schools? Do they get to complete the course first? Do the schools get assistance with that?
I can probably respond to the very first part of that question, and maybe my colleague expert in education attainment can say more, or we can bring you some more information after this. But in terms of those children that we were talking about, the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who arrive in Hillingdon, either through being allocated, erroneously in the hotels, from them, being considered adults, or through various Heathrow or various other means in which they arrive. When they arrive, they will receive ESOL for the duration of the stay here until the national transfer scheme will ensure that they move on to a place where they're going to be looked after, for long term. And if they remain here for longer, and they become our looked after children, so they remain until they're 18. And I think the ESOL is it 3 months, or yeah, it depends on their needs, and it depends on their progress, and it depends on the kind of child by child circumstances. And then during that time, our virtual school and our education colleagues will be looking at identifying the right place, the right school place, and making sure that move on from ESOL into mainstream education is done by education specialists who will know how to address the needs individually.
Yes, I agree with Alex who's just explained. I think there is a plan, there is a framework for ESOL to support a child until such a time that they're able to then pick up English and are able to move from, for example, entry 1 to level 1. So there is a framework around it. That's been in place for a while, and I think as we've seen, particularly post-16, our colleges have really supported our young unaccompanied asylum seekers. There's entry 1 to level 2 ESOL courses that are available.
Okay, Councillor Sweeting.
One comment before I ask my question. My comment is, with our significant unfilled primary places, there should be no problem in accommodating any primary children, should there not. When it comes to secondary, I think the real problem is that we've got such tight spaces in certain areas that I can understand that might be a problem. But coming back to my question, and it's about the airport hotels that are being used. At one point, the message that we were getting is that they were going to be used less and less. And in fact, at one point, I think, we were told that one of the hotels was empty. But, residents were then quite surprised that suddenly they were full again. So have we got any idea when these hotels might be vacated for good? Because it has been going on for a significant number of, and it has impacted on the nearest schools.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take that question. I think yes, indeed, we do have hotels around Heathrow. So during the pandemic, those have been set up because they were empty and they were they were available. And in terms of the numbers increasing or decreasing, the numbers in Hillingdon did decrease to what it was near the pandemic. I don't have an updated number at hand because that wasn't necessarily something we were thinking about presenting today. The numbers are decreasing, but there are indeed still hotels who are being used. Some of them have been stood down, and I know that because some of them are not being used at all. So the number has decreased in that respect. But I don't have any information, any kind of clear information to provide now to this committee to say when and if those existing hotels are going to be stood down, and if they are, what is the plan to address that. So that's potentially a subject for future meetings or for a different committee.
Maybe an update on that would be useful.
Is that something you can provide, Alex? Is that something under your service, or?
It's probably more to it's more place. It's more in that. But I will look to see what information I can get just because we're here, and I'll provide you an update.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. One of the big stakeholders in this admission process are the schools themselves. Have they given much feedback on our admission policy as a borough? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? Has there been any constructive criticism? Is there any feedback on that, please? Thank you.
In what, as in how we process applications, or?
Yes. So, ease of accessibility, efficiency, communication, those sorts of things.
So we have a good working relationship with all of our schools, and any feedback that they share with us, we will have open conversations. Our school improvement team work with them closely, and if there isn't issues raised, they will have those conversations. I know particularly the schools that are closer to the hotels, they are the ones that do seem to be significantly impacted more than other schools, and we will support them as best we can, but it is that continuous movement of children in and out of the borough that does have an impact on those schools. But all of our schools support the processes and policies that we have in place, and we share them regularly with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Great. Okay, so we will bring this item to a close. The recommendation is that we note the report, so noted. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you both for joining. Okay, agenda item 6 then, Hillingdon Safeguarding Partnership Annual Report. So I am going to hand over to Susie. Yeah, thank you.
There we go. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through the report. It is quite large, and I will give you a little bit of an overview. You have all hopefully got this in front of you, so that just is a supplementary document that explains very simply the kind of the role and function of the Safeguarding Partnership and how it works. So I'll run through that first to set the context for you. So essentially, the Safeguarding Partnership is made up of the three statutory partners. That's the local authority, the ICB, and the Metropolitan Police and the police. So each of the partners has shared an equal responsibility for safeguarding adults and children in Hillingdon. And from 2023, we had some new guidance issued at the end of the year, new Working Together to Safeguard Children, that really flagged the importance of the inclusion of education as well. So almost as the fourth statutory partner, not quite enshrined in legislation yet, but it's coming. Within Hillingdon, we have mirrored arrangements across children and adults, reporting to the same executive leadership group. And the reason that we do that is because of the importance of what we refer to it as Think Family. So that is very simply that our child-focused practitioners are thinking about the adults and the parents, and our adult-focused practitioners, so for example our substance misuse workers, are thinking actually what about the child of this parent? What's the impact? What difference does this make? So there's that approach of Think Family across the entire network. We're also really aware that lots of agencies within the borough will work with both adults and children. So we want to avoid duplication and try to be as efficient as possible with the time that we've got. So we've got those the statutory partners, as I've mentioned, and then there's a whole range of agencies that are referred to as relevant agencies. So on the third slide that you've got some examples of that. And those agencies or representatives of those agencies will be involved in attending the safeguarding boards and also at various subgroups where the work of the safeguarding boards is done. And the attendance at subgroups is topic specific. So the Centre for Expertise for Child Sexual Abuse would be involved with our Child Sexual Abuse subgroup. Okay, so that just hopefully gives you a little bit of background. In terms of the report, so for this evening I've kind of focused my verbal summary on the child aspect of the partnership work. So starting kind of at the very beginning, one of the things that we do throughout everything actually is make sure that we're engaging directly with children and young people in Hillingdon. And we do that through meeting directly with the children in care councils, with our child in need and children subject to CP plans, forums, really making sure that we are listening to and actively seeking actually the views of children and young people. And then we go one step further to what we call co-production. So that's kind of working with children and young people to identify what their priorities are, to work out what's important, what they think, what they feel, and then to make sure that that is kind of threaded through the work of the partnership. So you'll see at the kind of the outset of the report, there's some work around the voice of the person that sets out how we've done that with children over the last year. Some of the kind of key areas of impact of that have been around briefings to raise awareness of what it's like to have a mental health issue if you're a child. And that actually came from a young person who understood the work that we did and came to us and said, actually, I've got a poem, I've got some artwork that I would like you to use to raise awareness of what it's like to be a young person with a mental health issue. So we took that sort of one step further and went and got some additional input from adults and then produced something that was really quite comprehensive, practice briefing that went out across all agencies in Hillingdon, really highlighting the voice of the person. Okay. Some of the other things that have happened with children and young people is we have had them come to the board to deliver their annual report themselves in person. They have also done so with the executive leadership group, so that's made up of the most senior representatives of the statutory partners, so Tony Zaman, the local authority chief exec, Sean Wilson, who's the Met Borough Commander, and Jennifer Roy, who's the chief nurse for the ICB. We've had sessions directly with various board members talking about You Said We Did, so what the children told us and what we've done in response. And they've also delivered their Walking in Our Shoes training to a number of different agencies, so directly to police officers, directly to nursing staff, to colleagues in education within the DSL networks and things. And then in March of this year, we then went back to the children again and said, okay, now what? What next? So you'll have seen, hopefully within the papers, we've got you said, we did, what next? And that just shows how we're going to kind of continue to work with them in the coming year. I've mentioned a little bit about the mental health awareness day briefing that we did. Some of the other awareness raising activity that we've undertaken across the year has been in respect of Show Racism the Red Card. So lots of work around the importance of cultural literacy in safeguarding practice, understanding and celebrating the diversity that we have in our community and what that means, and how that adds to our strength as a community. We have also undertaken some awareness raising activity around suicide prevention and around child exploitation. So the awareness raising work is about kind of levelling up, really, so making sure that practitioners, the community, are aware of issues and can recognise signs and indicators of concern. The next sort of layer of training that we have is the practice briefings. We'll then move through to our commission training, and we also offer various webinars. So again, these are aimed at representatives of any agency, so anybody working with children and young people in the borough. The value of the webinars is that they are free, so they are accessible to perhaps the charity and voluntary sector who maybe don't have a great deal of money for training and things. And then they're made available online. So that's something that's been really successful and worked really well, and I think is quite valued across the partnership. In terms of the work that's taken place within the subgroups, so all of our subgroups have a really simple framework of prevention, identification and response. So that means that we're looking at how we might prevent child sexual abuse, how we might identify it, and what we need to do in order to respond to it. And we're thinking about that from, again, a multi-agency perspective. So what needs to happen within children's services, what colleagues within the police need to do, what's our health response, what's working well, what could perhaps we do differently, and actually where can we do more. So you'll perhaps have seen some work that we're doing around the NSPCC PANTS campaign, which is it's a preventative programme aimed at reducing the risk of sexual abuse. So that's happening. One of the other things that we've done in the last year is to make some progress around the launch of a contextual safeguarding strategy. So this is thinking about the risks that children and young people might face outside of their family, so in their communities, in their schools, in their neighbourhoods. And colleagues within Community Safety Partnership have been instrumental in launching a pilot of a contextual safeguarding approach in Hayes. So that's in its infancy at the moment, but we'll hopefully see that develop as the year wears on. In terms of the partnership's assurance work, we have a multi-agency quality assurance schedule, which is quite a wordy way of saying that we will identify across the year a number of areas of focus, then undertake a multi-agency audit. So that's working together with experts across the different agencies to look at practice and to identify strengths and areas for development. In the subject year, we looked at allegations against people in positions of trust, and from that some recommendations were made. Those recommendations were then taken on board, and some improvements and changes and alterations were made to processes to just kind of make that system work a little bit smoother. And then we also look at our own work, so undertook some auditing in relation to the impact and reach of training, again using that to inform training for the year ahead. And then we also have an independent scrutineer come along on an annual basis. So this is Alan Caton. Alan came along and looked at the functioning of the Safeguarding Adult Board, Children's Board and the Exec Leadership Group in quite some detail, and you'll see the kind of summary of his report at the outset of the annual report. So moving on, this year we are going to continue obviously to work with our children and young people, and we've got some new areas of focus around transitional safeguarding. So that's thinking about how children, when we're reaching kind of 18, how they successfully transition into adulthood, where there might be a safeguarding concern or where they might have an additional need. So I'm very aware that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you for providing the slides which provides that diagram, that flow chart, which is really helpful. Before we take questions, I'll just remind the committee that we're focused on the children's section of this report. Obviously, it's quite a lengthy document, so make sure your questions are surrounded by, focused on the children's bit. Okay, Councillor Gohill.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My question was, how can we best leverage the positive feedback from the Ofsted inspection to continue innovating in our... Ooh, someone doesn't want me to ask a question. I'll repeat myself quickly. I was just asking how we can best leverage the positive feedback from the Ofsted inspection to continue leveraging in our safeguarding services for children and families.
Okay, I'll take that. In terms of the, so thank you for mentioning obviously the outcome of the inspection. That was quite a good reflection of the work that we're doing and we continue to do in Hillingdon. And the inspection was focusing, obviously, it did look at the multi-agency aspect of the work. It looked at the safeguarding partnership work, but it also focused on what the children's services are doing, in safeguarding children. Just one point of just reinforcing some of the things that Susie was saying and what's in this flow chart. Children's services and the local authority are one part of the safeguarding partnership, equal partner with police, with ICB, and so, but also the good results and the good of the judgment reflects that multi-agency work very well. And in taking forward the recommendations from Ofsted, obviously the findings of the report and the analysis of what that meant was presented at the board. The board has looked at the recommendation, have taken those into account, and the safeguarding partnership will be looking and is looking at what the Ofsted have said. We also had later on in the year, we had a CQC and Ofsted joint inspection for our SEND services. That was also taken into account, and equally the partnership takes into account the outcome of inspections for the police, for instance. So they had independent inspection, Hillingdon Hospital, ICB, everyone in the partnership who have this sort of external scrutiny from the regulators. That gets fed into our learning matrix, if you like. So all that information, all the good, the bad, and the what needs to be improved goes in, and all of that gets translated into the subgroups, into the workings of the board, and ultimately in training, practice guidance, and then how do we close the circle? Year on year, we're looking at seeing what the impact of that was, and that's where the priority groups are coming in. Because those groups, some of them are ceasing because they met their criteria. Others are continuing because we're still dealing with that particular area of practice. So it all sort of fits into the learning and reviewing cycle.
Councillor Sweeting.
Well, it's a heavy read, isn't it? Well, thank you and all of your teams for contributing to this very weighty document. I think we've said this in the past, that it is quite a difficult one to get through. I've got questions for almost every page, which obviously is not possible. But there's one thing that I kept on putting a C against with all my questions, and that was capacity. Quite a few times there were a few words that sort of suggested that the number of referrals or people or youngsters or whatever that need the support, it was a stretched situation. Now I know that this also includes all of the other areas that we're not responsible for, and I accept that through you, Chair. I do accept that. But is there a capacity problem? Because we know that there's problem with mental health, we know that there's problem with more referrals, we know the MASH team is very, very busy, we know all of these things. And we want to be assured, because that's what we're here for, that this report is telling us, really, we're doing everything we can, but there are some issues here with capacity. I think it's the 3 C's as far as I'm concerned. It's capacity, it's communication, which seems to be somewhat, and it's consistency as well. There seems to be some lack of consistency between maybe not your team, but your team being in contact with other teams in the other areas. So I think your view on capacity would be useful, please.
If I can make a start to that question, and absolutely, yeah, I mean, good spot. And as we all know, capacity across the sector, to be honest, it's quite a challenge for all of us, and that includes the safeguarding partnership agencies. So we're looking at, we're looking at police, we're looking at health, we're looking at hospital, we're looking at local authority, children's services, all those. And we know, for instance, what the data shows us, just to kind of focus on, for instance, children's services. We know that, post-pandemic, the demand has increased by 40% across children needs. And that then kind of tapered off a bit, but the new normal is about 29 to 30% increase to what it was prior to pandemic. And that's not just something that we see in children's services. We see that across, because the same family, the same children will require healthcare, will require education, all the things that we were scrutinizing and we talk about in here. So no doubt about it. And I think one thing that it's worth mentioning in this context, especially because we're talking about multi-agency approach. One thing that we're doing in Hillingdon, we're doing fairly well. It's focusing our intervention, try to go upstream, if you like, looking at sort of early intervention, early and early help to the families. And we have the stronger family model, which I'm sure it has been here before. We talked about it before, and I know it's being scrutinized by this committee. So that's a good example of how we get together within our localities, with all the other agencies, with schools, with health, with the police, with social care, early intervention, to make sure that we pick up any issue that might arise as early as possible and try to address them before they become a problem. And I think that's probably the best and the most effective way to manage that capacity, to manage that demand, to make sure that when we start, if we know the pattern, if we know the trends, we can do something with the local community, with the third sector, and with all the partners in the localities. And for those families who start to struggle, we try to intervene and support in a proportionate way at that point in time, rather than waiting for all that demand to increase to the point where you need to have a social work intervention, the police becomes involved, or any of the other things. But one thing about some of the other C's you mentioned, I think the consistency, it's a key element of what we're trying to achieve through the safeguarding partnership. And I think when Susie was mentioning the multi-agency audits that we're doing, that is one of the things we're looking at picking up, because it's all part of closing the circle. For instance, if we do some work, like we mentioned, we do quite a bit of work at the moment on sexual abuse. Well, if we're going to be putting out there practice guidance and best practice models and all those sort of things, that gets shared with everyone, then we need to make sure that that's applied consistently, it's understood in the same way, it's well communicated, and it has an impact. And that's why, in response to the previous question, that's how we close the circle. That's how we try to make sure that if we implement something this year, we not just implement it and then we walk away. We come back to it the next year through audits and through various measurements to make sure it has an impact.
Thank you. Could I have a follow-up, please? Yes, it was a very weighty tome, but reading page 25, it mentions that the local area partnership inspection for SEND was expected, but it's now happened. We've had the inspection at the end of April, beginning of May, and I was wondering whether, because of the timescale that you've got to actually respond to that, what's happened, and could you comment on that, please?
I promise I'm not going to respond to any more questions after this, because this is Susie's report, it is Susie's work, but I think these are questions that kind of cut across in other things that are not necessarily a part of the purely just safeguarding partnership. The outcome of the SEND inspection has not been included in the report because it didn't happen in this financial year. It happened. You're right.
That, but I thought
Yeah.
because you've mentioned it in the
Of
report,
course.
I think that needs to be sort of
Yeah,
mentioned.
absolutely acknowledge. And as everybody knows, that is published. It's available online, so it can be read. It's a public document now. And there are some recommendations that have been identified. I'm sure everybody's aware because you would have seen that report. And when I say we, again, that's not just the local authority. That's the local authority and the ICB as a partnership. We are now responding to those recommendations. A multi-agency plan to respond to those is being developed as we speak, and it needs to be submitted to the DFE and then published and be made public by mid-October. So we are working very closely with our ICB partners, and that is going to be available in the next month.
Thank you. Alex, I just want to come back to what you talked about with the reviews, quality assurance. So specifically on page 18, it says that the reviews considering the quality of safeguarding practice were largely positive. So I'm just wondering what happens in instances where the practice has fallen short of expectations. I'll give you a chance to look at that. It's page 18, paragraph number 6, quality assurance. It says where reviews considered the quality of safeguarding practice, the outcomes were largely positive. So I just wonder what happens if it's fallen short. Yeah, thank you.
So each audit will generate a range of different recommendations and findings. They're reported to the safeguarding board, whether it's the child board or the adult board. Findings are then followed up and revisited, and there's a plan associated with each audit. So if there was something that suggested there was a kind of a significant concern for a child or an adult, obviously that would be escalated to the relevant body immediately. But if there was something that was a more of a, actually practice could be better if, then that will form part of a related action.
All right, thank you. Mr. Little.
Thank you. 2 questions, if you'll allow, Chair. On page 32, there's a little block at the top where it talks about priorities, and it has educational safeguarding as a new among the new priorities. I presume education safeguarding has been a priority throughout anyway. So, what aspect is in the new priority and why?
The new refers to the formation of a specific education safeguarding subgroup. So we have a specific subgroup that has representatives from early years, primary, secondary, FE and special, and the local authorities education team and the child protection lead for education. And that's really focused on making sure that we are hearing feedback from our head teachers and from our schools, and also that the work of the partnership is kind of cascading out appropriately to the schools as well. So that's why the education landscape is incredibly complex, with academies and maintained and all the different ages, and so we thought it would be beneficial to have something that is very specifically education focused. That subgroup is then linked out to all of the existing education forums. So we've got primary head teachers forum, secondary head teachers forum, all the other head teachers forums that are all connected into that subgroup. So it's more about coordinating and organising.
Secondly, you talk about contextual safeguarding for a layman like myself who's not day-to-day involved. In practical terms, what does it mean? What difference is the approach making?
So when we're thinking about contextual safeguarding, we are talking essentially about harm that happens outside of the family home. So we're thinking about things like child criminal exploitation, child sexual exploitation, and serious youth violence. So we are talking about how we, as a network, engage with the environments, with the context that this happens in. So really simply, if, for example, we've got a number of issues in a park that's really dark, then actually what we might want to do to improve safety in that park is improve the street lighting. Improving street lighting is not traditionally a safeguarding activity, so we're talking about kind of intervening in a safeguarding lens in the context in which harm happens. Makes sense.
Thank you. Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you very much, Chair. Two lines of questioning. The first around young people's voices who may not have a voice, and that can come either through if they were, say, in a criminal gang where they may be scared to use their voice, or somebody who has a disability who is actually unable to speak, which we have a large amount of young people. And I just wondered if, not that it was missing, but I just wondered if I couldn't find a lot about that in the report. The second bit, I think, probably leads on with the multi-agency safeguarding training and how we give, I'm going to call it soft skills to parents to be able to protect, and carers to protect young people from particular safeguarding issues that they may face, whether that be social media, the sharing of images, etc., which can be a challenge for parents when you've got 14, 15-year-olds who want to be strong and independent, but also maybe being exploited. So there's a different balancing act, and I just wondered how that sort of weaves into here, because I wasn't missing, but it kind of got touched on. But it would be good to get a little bit more information on those two. Thank you very much.
Okay. So in terms of seeking the voices of children with disabilities, we've done a whole stream of work around behaviour as a form of communication. We have some multi-agency practice guidance that have been reviewed and updated this year around working with children with disabilities, and we have on our, I haven't mentioned our website, but we have a website with lots of resources, lots of practice guidance, lots of useful tools for professionals and parents actually, is available and is in the public domain. Specifically in relation to the You Said We Did, I haven't included it within the full report because it's a really large document, but the You Said We Did is translated into PECS, which is the Picture Exchange Communication System, which is a mechanism of engaging directly and communicating with children with disabilities. So we have taken that into account. It is something that we are continuously working on, and we have also taken into account the views of some of our children who are in our residential placement. So I think if you look on the page before, on page 29, there's a little tiny example of the PECS, just explaining, just to kind of demonstrate what that looks like and how we use that. The second part of the question was around engaging with parents. So when we're looking at the awareness raising activity, all of that is available online. It's all published on our website. We circulate information out via the schools, via the Stronger Communities team, so reaching out to voluntary and faith-based sector, and we are also specifically as part, I've mentioned our PANTS campaign, we've got sessions planned for parents, directly with parents, so that sort of thing we would coordinate usually with schools and with our children's centres, so those kind of direct parent-facing organisations, if that makes sense.
Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Susie. Again, thank you for quite a comprehensive report. I'd be grateful if you can explain how the initiatives addressing sort of child sexual abuse, neglect and exploitation are communicated to the community, and what role do schools or local organisations play in prevention, and how does the council facilitate that dialogue? And also I'm particularly interested in what steps we're taking to ensure early intervention for children who may be at risk but don't necessarily meet the statutory review criteria.
So I will answer your question using the example of child sexual abuse and go the whole way through. So in terms of how we engage with parents and with the community and with schools, we have been, as part of the PANTS campaign, we have been running multiple training sessions that have been available free of charge to representatives from any organisation working with children in Hillingdon to become PANTS champions, so trained in delivering the PANTS message. PANTS is it's an acronym for Private to Private. Always remember your body belongs to you. Oh gosh.
No is no.
No means no. That's it. Thank you. Talk to someone you trust and stay safe. So that is supported by a dinosaur. There's storybooks. There's animation. There's all sorts of interactive, interesting, accessible resources for children. For children with additional needs, for children who communicate through Makaton, and for parents. It's absolutely a comprehensive rollout of the PANTS programme, with the training for parents, training for schools, training for professionals across all other organisations. We have a conference coming up in about 3 weeks or so, where parents can come along and meet with the NSPCC directly. So that's how we do it, to try and think about actually what who needs to know about this and how can we tell them about it. Information is circulated via the newsletter, so we publish a newsletter regularly, usually about every 6 weeks or so, that provides anybody who is interested with a bit of an overview of key issues within the partnership. So that's how we do that. In respect of contextual safeguarding, so what's happening with the project in Hayes, every child attending secondary school in Hayes has been asked to complete a survey talking about how safe they feel in the community. That survey is also being, or a slightly adapted version of it, is being asked of parents, of local community members. A plan to address any issues that are identified will be developed based on the findings of those surveys, and then there's a feedback loop as well. I think I might have waffled slightly, but does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Alex, yeah.
Could I just add just a couple of points to that, because I think, obviously we are, due to the nature of this committee, we're focusing on the local authority response to various things. And just to kind of re-emphasize, the safeguarding partnership is local authority and police and ICB. So all the work that we do, all the work that Susie does and her team, is not just the local authority, it's everyone together. And that's where it kind of becomes sometimes quite, sometimes that's the challenge, but quite often that is the opportunity on how we deliver this. And all the documents that we mention, including this report, once it's all approved, all these documents are publicly available. We do very little things that are, confidential to a certain organization, to a certain agency. And I was just wondering, Chair, if it's helpful to include a link to the website, to the minutes of this meeting, so everyone has access to it. So you could just browse the website, have a look at all the materials and all that sort of thing, because that will answer quite a lot of this question or your constituents might have.
If you are so inclined, you can also sign up to receive a copy of the newsletter and any briefing or anything as and when it's published, and it will automatically come to you. There's a link on the website where you can do that.
And sign up to any training as well. We can do that. Okay, so Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the quality assurance. General feedback was quite positive. One of the issues that stood out to me, because we get safeguarding training every year in schools, at least once a year. You'll be glad to know. So one of the key ones is allegations. So if there's an allegation against a member of staff, you go to the head teacher. One against the head teacher, you go to the chair of governors. And a kid pointed this one out. What if you have got allegation against the chair of governors? But that's for a very different situation. But in terms of the recommendations, it was about allegations against staff involved with children and volunteers. What was the outcome of that? Did we put policy in place to test that and put that in place, or?
If you have an allegation against the chair of governors, go straight to the ladder. That would be the first bit with that. In terms of the findings of the audit, there were a number of recommendations. There were lots of strengths. There were no issues in terms of kind of practice, if that makes sense, or outcome. There were some areas that we thought could be kind of structurally better in terms of capturing data, so kind of process aspects rather than practice aspects. As with all of the other audits that we do, there is a kind of a linked plan to that, and every aspect on that plan has been addressed and progressed. So,
Do you have a follow-up?
Then I'll have a second question. Yep. Just on the relevant agencies as well. I mean, it's a whole matrix of a network there. And one of the, probably I'd say one of the bigger ones is education. You see kids every day in and out. One of the big key areas in safeguarding has been a recent topic is FGM. And you know, it's not picking up what you might see or hear on the ground. Has there been much of that in our borough, or is that something you might not be aware of?
In the previous year, we undertook a large project in conjunction with the National Centre for FGM and developed some training that has been rolled out nationally around FGM. It's available free online on the FGM Centre's website. So as a port authority, we know that FGM is an issue that is faced within our borough, and we also work with Border Force to make sure that there are opportunities to seek help and there's awareness kind of in the airport and around sort of departures. We are just about to mark International Day of the Girl Child, which has a focus on identifying, recognising risk around FGM and what to do if you're concerned. So it is something that we are continuously revisiting. Although it's not a stated priority this year, we still provide the training free of charge. The e-learning is still out there, and we're still kind of revisiting it through our awareness raising activity.
Okay, Mr. Little.
Thank you. You talk in the report about a new fostering offer. In what way has it changed from previously, and how big a capacity issue is there?
Thank you. This again kind of moves away from the student partnership. I will take it very quickly. Okay. I'm not going to go into it because I'm pretty sure a specific report about this will come to this committee.
It comes to our corporate parenting panel, and the minutes of that are usually shared in this. So, Alex, if you want to, but if not, then we can move
I'll
on.
just very briefly mention that the offer has been launched this year. It's been a public launch, and various members of the elected members have attended, and all the details are on our website, on our council website, and I will strongly encourage everyone to have a look. And if you know anyone who might be interested to foster, do pass on the details, because the offer it's a very good offer.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you very much. Right, it's big page 69, little number 47. It's concerning a very serious issue regarding schools using staff with lesser experience, which sometimes affect outcomes for SEND children and other children. What is the council able to do that? Because just the sentence saying there is an increase of agency and lesser qualified staff being expected to manage complex situations without the necessary skills or training. Now, that is worrying. I mean, to read that is worrying. So what can we do to move that on? We realise that trying to employ various teachers and support staff with the right training is increasingly difficult, but that has a worrying theme to it.
So that's within the findings of the LADO, reflecting on themes and issues arising in the last year. One of the things that has been put in place, we've increased capacity in terms of our training from the LADO, so the availability of the number of sessions available through the year, to make sure that where we have schools and other agencies actually employing people, that they understand safer recruitment processes. So that's one thing that has happened. One of the other things that is currently happening, not in the report because it's currently happening, is an increase in capacity within the kind of education safeguarding world. So that is happening presently, and we will be kind of reporting back on that in the next year.
And just to add apologies, just to add another point to that, as Susie said briefly at the beginning of the report in that verbal summary, the new guidance that came out last year in December, the Working Together 2023, does specify that the education, the whole the education sector, as you were, should be the fourth statutory partner. They will then join the local authority, police, and ICB in becoming the decision makers, if you like, in terms of safeguarding. And I think issues like this comes back to what you said, Councillor, previously about capacity across sector and how to address. And I think that's why it's important to have all the partners at the table, because this sort of issue, that's when we get together to find out some of those solutions that are not always about more numbers of people. Sometimes it's different approaches, sometimes it's training, sometimes it's different procedures and all that. So I think we as a partnership, we're on it, but by no means is an easy task for local authority, for education, for anyone else, because the demand it's definitely there.
And this, in many respects, is a part two. So, were we involved in any way? Was Hillingdon involved in any way with a case that's been reported just in the last couple of days about one of our primary schools? It was in my London, so I don't know whether it's included in one of the referrals here in the report, or whether we knew about it, because it didn't come through the normal way, did it? This particular case, it came through, tipping over an issue, I think.
I mean, this is obviously it's an annual report, so this will include themes and patterns that were identified throughout the year. So in terms of which individual case wasn't included, it's a bit difficult to say just now. However, because of it's something that came to light in this financial year, it predated the end of this report. But we are aware of it. We are aware of the concerns, and we are looking at what if anything should be put in place, especially around safer recruitment, especially around those things. So I'm not going to comment in any way because it's an ongoing issue that we're considering.
I just wondered if we were involved in any way, and we were, so that's all I really wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to operate in sort of like the middle ground between this select committee and the other one, and ask a question that I hope is relevant, and if it's not, tell me to be quiet, Chair. Parents and carers, probably more parents than carers, I would guess, in this scenario, who may have suffered from safeguarding issues as a young person, or maybe a young person themselves, and may have suffered safeguarding issues. What specific support do we give them to tackle the safeguarding issues with the young people that they may be responsible for? And I know that's quite nuanced and quite niche, but actually it's incredibly important, I think, because the experiences of that adult will have an impact on that young person at all times. So I just wondered what support and mechanisms we have in place to A, recognise what that looks like and how we pick it up, and B, if they come to us with like a historic case of child exploitation or something else, how we support them to make sure that they can still be good to that young person. And these are all intermixed, and you don't need me to tell you how the challenges that you face.
Thank you. I'll start and respond to that. First of all, thinking about those young people who have been through, suffering various forms of neglect and abuse or whatever it was, and especially those who have been looked after by the local authority, we do have a duty to provide them with support and advice after the age of 25. So even if they are 18, so they are adults, some of them, majority of them are moving into independent accommodation, supported accommodation, whatever it might be, we remain, as a local authority, we remain involved then to the personal advisors until they're 25, at different levels of engagement depending on their needs and their willingness to actually still be engaged with us. The other thing that I think was mentioned today that links into this, and this is when Susie was explaining the reason why we have the Safeguarding Children Partnership and Adult Partnership under the same umbrella of the Executive Leadership Board, because that is our fundamental belief that think family. It's a really important theme. We cannot and we never will assess a child individual to that child's context, that child's family, and that child's lived experience. So every time we assess any new referral that's presented to us, we always use, it's a triangle of assessment. We look at the child's need, we need at the parenting and the parent's needs, and then we look at the family and the wider environment. So that triangulation of needs, that will provide us, when we're looking at providing us with what's the history of the parents, what are the parents' needs themselves, and how those impact on a child. But also, we're looking at what the strengths are in that family, what the strengths are in the wider family, and how that can be used in a plan, in that child's plan, towards achieving outcomes. And if there is, on the last point that you make, Councillor, if there is a disclosure of historical sexual abuse, historical whatever other form of abuse, there are very clear and well-established processes between local authority and the police of how those are being received, how those are being investigated from a criminal investigation perspective, and also through various services and that are available not just from the local authority but throughout in the borough. Those parents will be supported, and of course if they are parents themselves, then that becomes something for Children's Service to see how the children can be supported as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councillor Judge.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask, now what key recommendations from Alan Caton's scrutiny has the Council taken on board in relation to children and young people?
So by Council, do you mean the Safeguarding Partnership? Okay, just bear with me 1 second. I will pull up the recommendations from the website. So Alan's letter is uploaded onto the website and is in the public domain if you'd like to have a look at it. What we have done is the focus on ensuring education representation. So following Alan's scrutiny process, we have improved the links between the education safeguarding subgroup and the various networks. We have better representation at the Safeguarding Children's Partnership, so primary head, secondary head with deputies, and an FE head, and we are just about to implement a representative of education at the exec leadership group level as well. So that was a specific action in relation to a recommendation. I need to kind of go back and check the other. Is that sufficient for you to or do you want me to go through all of the recommendations from Alan's?
Mainly the main recommendations, and if there are any recommendations that you would find challenging to fulfil.
Okay. Councillor Judge, can you be a bit more specific, because I don't think that's fair to ask Susie to. Which recommendations in particular are you asking for further information on? Presumably you've looked at the recommendations yourself.
Yes.
So can you just explain which ones you would like her to give you further information on?
Yep. So I would like more information on strengthening multi-agency collaboration and also improving early intervention in Pacific. Thank you.
Susie, are you able to provide information on that? If you can't, or at this moment in time, happy to.
So I have it available. In terms of improving collaboration, I think that relating to the previous year. So the areas for consideration from 2023 are around the integration of senior leaders in education within the Safeguarding Partnership, which I think we've talked through. The only thing that I haven't mentioned there is that we also have education leaders attending subgroups as well, so not just in the education safeguarding but in the other work as well. Specifically in relation to children, the chairing roles, so trying to make sure that this shared and equal responsibility, so that we have chairs from all different organisations rather than it simply always being the local authority. So we have the ICB, designated nurse for safeguarding, chairing the child sexual abuse subgroup now. We have at the moment, a representative from the local authority education service chairing education safeguarding, just about to transition through to head teachers. So there's more variety in the leads for the subgroups. The other area of recommendation that was specific to children's was around police representation at subgroups, so partnership and subgroup meetings. The police are now chairing the Safeguarding Children's Partnership and the co-chairing Strategic High Risk Panel. They have representation at the various subgroups, including learning from practice. And we have the schools policing, attending, education, safeguarding. So depending on the focus of the subgroup, we might have someone different from different kind of branches of police. One of the areas that we are continuing to work on is the availability of a multi-agency data set to inform strategic work. That is quite challenging because if you imagine the data that the police collate is gathered and analysed slightly differently compared to the local authority, compared to health data, compared to community health, compared to the hospital. So that is something that is tricky. It's not tricky for Hillingdon alone. It's tricky for every partnership. So we're still kind of working through that at the moment. And another area of recommendation specifically from last year's scrutiny was about the local authority enhancing and developing the LEAP website, which is the education-focused website. Lots and lots of work has happened around that, so that has progressed really well. And I think the other recommendations largely apply to adults. Does that help? Yeah? Thank you.
Right, okay. Any other further questions or comments? No, fabulous. Okay, thank you so much, both of you, for joining this evening, and thank you for all your hard work and answering all our questions.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's a very weighty report, but it's got some absolutely fascinating information, and I have waded through it all. I've got so many more questions, but that's for another day.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7, which is minutes from the corporate parenting panel. So, let me just go back to 6. So we were just noting the recommendations and submitting comments to Cabinet, so we can delegate authority to the three of us, I guess. Councillor Sweeting.
I have some suggested comments. I was fixated by my 3 C's, I'm afraid, which is capacity, communication and consistency. So basically something in the region of the Select Committee welcomes this report, which provides comprehensive information in respect to the safeguarding of our children, young people and families. We acknowledge the hard work being undertaken by all partners. However, we do have concerns as to capacity in some areas, as the need for support increases, as well as the need to improve communication and consistency in some areas. That's generally what I'm suggesting, something in those
Okay, so if you send them across to Ryan and then
we'll do. Thank you.
Agenda item 7 then, minutes from the corporate parenting panel. So do we agree with the minutes? Just to note there also that the structure of the meeting and the presentation of the reports is currently under review, so we'll be looking at that, and obviously the way that it will be presented will come back with further information. From the minutes, I would just like to highlight the comments made by the health representatives as well. So I'll just quickly read it. It says the health representatives noted that Hillingdon had the best corporate parenting panel of those that they attended and commended the inclusion of young people in their meetings. So I think that's something that we should be celebrating and just highlighting. So
through you, Chair, it's a fun time, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, they show us the way, don't they, the young people? Thank you.
Okay, so we agree those minutes? Agreed? Yeah, thank you. So agenda item 8 is the forward plan. So just on that, I think that we'd note that in October we've got the Youth Justice Plan, just something to be aware of. Councillor Sweeting.
I was just wondering, because of the Ofsted inspection, whether the report on SEND sufficiency strategy, I mean, I don't know whether that's part of it all, whether that's going to come to us first. I think it would be too soon if the outcome of the inspection is going to only come in mid-October. I don't quite know how that would fit into a timetable. Maybe we could just clarify that through you, Chair.
Ryan, do you have anything to comment on at this stage? Or?
I can look into that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Okay, so Ryan will take that away and come back to us. Okay, agenda item 9 then is the work programme. So just on that, obviously back in August we had our part 2 meeting with our young people. Thank you to those who attended. I think personally that it was a very good meeting, very insightful, very enlightening, thank you. So I think there were 4 of us in total, Mr Little, Councillor Gill and Councillor Batt and myself who were in attendance. It was great. I mean, I really enjoyed it. So Ryan is just finishing up the minutes on that. So they'll be ready, so he'll be circulating them soon, so look out for that. On the back of that meeting, I think it was worthwhile that perhaps we meet with parents and carers of the young people, whether it's their parents and carers or anyone else who would like to come along and share their views and experiences on persistent absenteeism. I think it would be worthwhile. So Ryan is currently exploring options, whether we can either, if everyone feels comfortable, to do it as a part 2, or we can do it in an open forum, or either face-to-face or virtually, whatever is the best option, and wherever they feel most comfortable. So just to be aware of that, and obviously as many members to attend as possible, that would be really helpful. Any other comments on the work programme? Yeah, Councillor Sweeting.
I think because our major review is a very complex and, well, it's got many strands to it. And we've had some very good witness sessions with some very good recommendations that have been included in the minutes. And I don't know, I mean, I know this is another job for Ryan, but we haven't got a meeting in October. Whether it's possible for all of the minutes of all of the witness sessions to be put together somehow, so that we will have a chance through October to go through them ourselves and see whether we can, individually or groups or whatever, bring them into some sort of recommendations that could inform the next meeting. I mean, I think of all the major reviews I've ever been involved in, this has had so many different strands, and we really haven't got all of the answers, but some of our witnesses did have some very good points. And I mean, the papers are there. Yes, we can go and find the papers that we had, or we can go online, but it would be quite good to have them in a watch that would inform sort of any discussions that we might have before our November meeting. That's one thing, that whether that's possible or not.
Okay, thank you.
Also, there's the SEND strategy, and I don't know whether that will then include anything that's come from the Ofsted inspection. I was a bit confused about what the Ofsted report part 2 meant as well, whether that was and when it came to the youth offer, I've been sort of looking at all of the times when something has come up on various Facebook pages about the youth offer, and I've seen a couple of things. It would be quite useful to have an audit of what's been happening in each of the areas. I know there was something at South Ruislip, there's something that's planned quite shortly somewhere else, in Ruislip. But when we do have the update on the youth offer, maybe we could just see how it's rolling out.
Yeah, so I guess that would come on the back of, obviously once we get that report to committee, we'll see if we need to ask for further information, then we can, but perhaps we...
It's just to see what's happening, because I don't know, under normal circumstances, when we have youth centres, we could see that on Tuesday they were doing X and Y. We haven't got that now.
Yeah, so when that item comes to committee in November, am I reading that right? The Hillingdon's youth offer and delivery model, is that what you're referring to? Yeah. So that comes in November. So what I'm proposing is let that come to our committee in November, and if we have any further questions or want further clarification, that we can then ask for that, because when they report, they might cover that in their presentation.
Well, I think I'd like them to ask them to include some information on what's actually happening in what areas. That's really what I'm saying. Otherwise, what are they reporting on?
Yeah, so my understanding is that they would be reporting on what they're doing. Yeah. Am I not reading this right? Am I not understanding it?
Sure, maybe I can be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm pretty sure, although I'm not very young anymore, so I wouldn't be personally attending these sessions, but I'm pretty sure there is quite comprehensive information on some of this on the council's website, Councillor Sweeting.
I found some, but not in certain areas, is all I'm saying.
And we have the Summer Fiesta thing and various other stuff that is published quite widely.
Yeah, I would be minded I would just be minded to wait until it comes to committee, and if it seems like they haven't really answered or provided the information that that you're seeking, then we can ask them for that. Councillor
Chair, maybe just be helpful. Maybe we could ask them to give them like a snapshot, because we don't want to have the ins and outs of everything, every part bit, but maybe a snapshot of a month of what the offering to young people that the council's providing looks like. Just like a 1 month snapshot, say September or something.
Okay, all right. Ryan, did you capture that? Yes, thank you. Any other questions, comments about the work programme? No. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our meeting. So the next meeting we have is in November, which feels like a while away, but it will be here very quickly. Recording still on, please can you sit down? Yeah, thank you. So bringing our meeting to a close and safe journey home. Thank you very much.